design. Hi, I'm Stefan. I'm one of the founders of Create. We are a small technology startup with 10 folks based in San Francisco and a presence in Washington, D.C. as well. Do we have any real estate developers in the audience today? Show of hands. No? One? All right, well then I'll be able to express my unique pain point to you, and hopefully you guys can give me some ideas as to how we can turn this wacky industry around. So there was an interesting point that was brought up yesterday in the pre-construction workshop, in the high-performance construction workshop that Steve mentioned, that there's a lot of kind of sense in the industry, especially on the design and construction side, that there's a lot of people on the ownership and development end that wish that there was a big button that you could push, that once their work is done, that a building would just pop up out of the ground. Well, obviously that doesn't happen, but the reason from obviously the owner's side is that, well, now that I've done all my work and I've underwritten this and decided this is feasible and there's a benefit to the community and the government signed off on it, how do I get that building online as quickly as possible? And to kind of share an anecdote here, there was a project I was involved with in DC where we were building a $150 million large-scale 5-star hotel project. And we worked on this thing for months and months on end, just to really get the idea as to whether or not is this a building we want to build. And we did a lot of things right. I mean, this was a really complicated project. We were talking government land with environmental remediation and unexploded ordnance. I mean, you name it, we had to deal with it. And all those things that we did right were fantastic, but there's a few shortcomings. And one of them in particular jumped out to me, and it was a point in time where in the communication of the blueprints and the design documents between the architecture firm and the developer, which I worked for, there was a miscounting in the number of rooms in the hotel. And you think to yourself, how is that possible? And on paper, when we're talking about the scope of an investment, the difference between a 298-room hotel and a 302-room hotel is millions and millions of dollars. And you know, we are 9 months into this process now, and all of a sudden the deal looks like it's in jeopardy. And you know, why do things like this happen? And I'm sure I'm not the first person that's suffered some potentially catastrophic miscommunications like this. And I mean, if you take a look at this, I mean, this is really kind of a breakdown as we think about how does information get passed between different people in the industry. And there was a question earlier today about a clearinghouse, and how great would it be if we had a centralized repository for all of this information, everything from design documents to financial analysis, permits, all these things. And I mean, this is a pretty mammoth undertaking that needs to be done in order to kind of streamline a lot of these archaic processes that we deal with. And what we did is we took a step back and we started to look at the deliverables. We said, all right, well, what is actually being passed between all these folks, and who is the central cog in that wheel? And it really came down to the developers and owners. Because whether I'm going out and getting a loan from a bank, or dealing with the government, filing permits, and working through entitlement, to getting a design, or bidding out the project with GCs, I'm really the one that has to orchestrate that entire process. I'm the director of the movie. But you know, if this was a baseball team, I'd be the manager of the team, but then the left fielder wouldn't really be talking to the catcher and the pitcher, and it just doesn't really work quite as well. And a large part of this is because we're all talking in different languages with different file formats, and you know, there's got to be some way where we can establish a common ground so that we can actually communicate effectively to bring these projects online more efficiently, more profitably, and with less risk. We want to get everyone's goals aligned. So what we're doing here is we're trying to bring all these things together under one roof and put them in context. And by doing it, we're trying to essentially build in additional layers of data into BIM. So whether you want to, I mean, I like to think of BIM almost as kind of the Gillette razor example. Is that, well, over so many years, they kept adding another blade to that razor, right? What's that right number? Is it 5 blades? Is it 6 blades? Well, we're up to 6 dimensions of BIM now. And you know, whether this is the 7th and 8th dimension or really 0-dimensional BIM, we're trying to pull together all those things that you guys have to go do on a day-to-day basis and say, you know what, we as a developer have done research to understand enough about this project that it's feasible. And that's why we're talking to you. We want to put money in your pockets, basically. And why are we replicating these efforts and making it so that the zoning research that we've done and the entitlement research that we've done and the financial feasibility analysis and the baseline cost estimation that we've got to do anyway in order to be able to pick the phone and call an architect or a contractor basically gets thrown away. You know, that's, in my mind, that's a lot of duplication of efforts, and it's really low value work on a lot of people's hands. So what we're doing is we're trying to pull all that together. And we have to design technology and solutions that really allow you to work across all these different disciplines. And as a developer, I mean, I'm skilled at really orchestrating different parties to these transactions, but by no means can I design a building on my own, and I'm certainly not going to pick up a shovel and go out there and start to excavate the hole. There's a lot of things that we need to kind of understand at a high level, but then to hand it off to people to deliver the high value end product, right? So what we need to do is to pull together something that is applicable in a wide variety of different scales and lives throughout the life cycle of the project. And for me, I mean, I produce initially an initial underwriting of a project, for instance, that says, okay, well, this is a go. We want to get to that green light. We want to fuel economic development. We want to put new buildings up. We want to develop new places for people to live, work, and play. But once I do that analysis, if I develop a static tool, basically it's something that we have to throw away. So what we're doing is we're trying to integrate this entire thought process of what the developer is doing. So we're taking, the most basic thing that we're doing is we're trying to take a look and say, all right, what's there now? Think of the building. If there's a building there, what is there? I mean, you know that you can go to the tax records and all these different permitting and regulatory agencies to find out what the building's made of, how tall it is, what kind of HVAC systems it has, building footprints. You can find all that stuff out. We all know that you can because we all use these same databases over and over again depending on the jurisdiction. And what we're doing is we're saying, okay, well, what other tables and what other data points can we marry that to in order to give you actually reconstruct a virtual model of this property? So we're using some technologies and some video gaming things which are kind of Halo-esque, and if you can generate a 3D model of a virtual world, why couldn't you do that for the city of San Francisco? Why couldn't you do that for the city of New York? Places where there's a tremendous impact for things like this to come in and fuel development. But then, there's financial ramifications for all these things. So we're talking about square footage, we're talking about dollars and cents. I mean, these are the two most basic metrics that everyone in this whole industry works with. And we have to basically provide a way to give people an idea, this is what your ballpark is, and then to hand it off to people to refine it over the course of time so that you can actually transition from everything from an initial feasibility stage all the way through the life cycle operation of the project. It's possible. I mean, the tools that are out there currently have the capability to do this. They just need to be integrated in such a way that it actually allows you guys to deliver the highest value. So what we're developing, and this is the first time we've actually ever really shown this to anyone, is a way to contextualize all the information about the built environment. So we're looking at the city in its entirety. And we're agnostic as to whether you're a 100,000-foot retail center or you're a single-family home. We're talking about building geometries married with data. And I mean, if you think of some of the things that Google and companies like this are doing, there's 100 different ways to collect data. And I think that one of the pervasive themes of this conference is really, wow, look at all this great new data that we're adding in. So I get asked the question from other groups of people, well, how do you get this information? I mean, I think everyone in this room understands that we have more information that we almost know what to do with. And now we just need to find tools to better filter and process that stuff. So what we're trying to do is build this tool that will take you and shepherd this project all the way from research to analysis and collaboration. So it's allowing you to generate a massing study of a building and then to use those geometries to run financial analysis, to tell you how many rentable square feet you have, what that building will be worth if a certain scope of work are applied to it. I mean, this is really, as a developer, is the question that I need to answer more than anything else. Does the cost of construction, I mean, does the financial return and the income that you can generate from your property justify the cost and the scope of work that needs to go into it? And we're trying to align basically what the market potential is for any particular property with what's there now. And what is that gap? What are we solving it for? And that really yields actually some really interesting things in terms of valuation and other potential economic impact metrics that we can take a look at. And I mean, we have to do this in such a way that we're providing the same level of context, just the way that mom and pop homeowner on the street would look at just the same as a large-scale developer. And it's all the same data sets. I mean, we're talking about population, demographics, construction costs by type, rents in the area. And when you think about it, is that there's a lot of companies like the one that I used to work for. It's a nine-person development company, and we had under our umbrella about $1 billion worth of total development value. And where do you draw that line between a Trammell Crow and a group like us? I mean, we were doing 5-unit deals, and we were also doing 250,000 square foot federal office campuses. It's really tough to distinguish that. So what you've got to do is really, our approach is to focus on specific geographies. So not to say, okay, well, how do we build a framework that we can look at any office building in the country, but how can I analyze any property in a specific city and get to know the market on a local level so that we can actually build in a layer of artificial intelligence that basically aggregates a lot of the knowledge that you all understand for your specific market. And we apply that, and this is another look at it where we can use textures to show actual buildings and actually show you basically what additions and new construction would look like as well. But we boil this down in such a way that it's understandable and that it's commonplace for the industry. What is my return on investment? And everything that we're talking about here on the design and construction side is really measuring the investment. But what I'm concerned about is how do I measure that return? Because there's really 3 or 4 different check boxes that I, as an owner and investor, have to check in order to move forward with a project and want to hit that button. And the quicker I can get to that decision, the better. And it eliminates, in a lot of cases, eliminates potentially years and years of planning and iterations. And we have to do this for every single iteration for every building that we look at. And how is that efficient in the context of a large growing city like San Francisco, when really what we want to do is find out, okay, me as an investor and developer, where's the best location for me to build this project? Where is there an opportunity where there's a misalignment in the market that I can take advantage of? And that's what this is meant to find. It's meant to help you identify opportunities for undervalued properties by looking at all those potential scenarios. And you can do that because the environment that we work in is really highly constrained. I mean, we're dealing with zoning constraints, we're dealing with height restrictions, and air rights, and there's so many different moving pieces. It's just a matter of having a little bit of understanding about how all these things work, and then building technology that can translate it into lines of code. And when I'm talking about how we can work together on this, and really how these things come together and get refined with collaboration. I know that I'm not going to get a GMP on day one. I'm not going to get a final bid for a project. I'm not going to get 100% design documents. I know that. And anyone who's done these projects understands that there is no magic button. I mean, I wish there was, but there's not. And we have to provide a way that with each successive iteration, and as the project is passed forth between each of these different project team members, the results become more and more accurate. So I can't be Zillow and give you a Zestimate that's usually wrong that tells you your house is worth $500,000. What I need to do is provide a range of potential outcomes for you to choose from so that when you dig deeper and you can actually specify these things, this is what that translates into in terms of dollars and cents. And it also builds in a lot of these other technologies that are coming out that do things like check for building code violations and things like that. And think about it, if I was building an affordable housing project, there are certain size restrictions based on you can't make the units 300 square feet in different jurisdictions. Well, me as an architect, I might not know that. Might not know how you're financing the project. There's a gap and an asymmetry of information that exists that we're trying to mitigate by showing you more information in one type package, basically. And so how do we actually get this data in? I mean, there's a lot of databases that are currently out there, but by and large, my role in this is assessing feasibility, and that's what a developer does. Is it says, is this a go, no-go deal? Because I like to refer to the development community as the shiny shoe crowd, because as soon as we get our contract signed, I'd like to be on the next flight to Florida playing golf and hand off the heavy lifting to the AEC crowd. But there's all these tools that are coming out now that we're using, and it's really, we're relying on you guys. We want to work with the Autodesk and the Trimbles of the world that are bringing technology into the field, and a lot of these other emerging technologies like 3D scanning that can instantly do, this is actually a video from a Google project called Project Tango, where you can instantly get the dimensions through one quick pass with 3D scan. And think about the portability of this when we're talking about not just institutional projects, but all the way down the scale into a residential customer. This is a tool that could be in the hands of millions of consumers across the United States, where we're building the foundation of a BIM. We're allowing even the small guy to kind of flatten the curve and to understand the information about the properties that they have and the building projects that they have. So there's a lot of these interesting technologies that basically we're looking to integrate with in order to deliver the most value to you, so that There's no more passing back and forth of emails and phone calls, and we want to, like I said, we want to put more money in the AEC community's pockets as we can. And every developer at heart is a deal junkie, and we want to get as many deals done as we can as long as we check those boxes. And this allows us to get to yes a lot quicker. And just kind of in closing, I mean, I saw this quote in a book that I was reading, and I think it speaks to what we're trying to accomplish and a lot of what I see going on in the industry as a whole. And it speaks to this concept of metro builders and people that aren't necessarily specialists in particular areas. And they're not just building affordable housing. They're not just traffic engineers, but they look at things in the context of the whole city. And as we're growing these major metro markets, it becomes more and more important for people to collaborate across all these disciplines. And I think that with all these new technologies coming out, and us included, I mean, we're looking to partner with groups that will be willing to bring that vision and make it a reality so that we can basically execute on this collaboration. And I think we're kind of all circling around the same vision of how all these things should work, and we're looking to really just help to expedite that.